Hello participants, in this session we will discuss digitization, methods and tools. Dear friends, this particular part comes under your paper 6, Information Technology Applications, Module 1, Library Automation, Unit 12, Digitization. Particularly in this discussion, we will try to cover what is digitization, how digitization occurs, what things are important to remember while we are talking or discussing on digitization or doing digitization, what are the various tools used in the process of digitizations, and how a library should plan digitization process while thinking for automated or digital library. So dear students, let's start the journey. Dear friends, participants, as you all know, we are in the age which is called digital age. Everything in library is now become digital. Digitization is the very first steps towards developing a digital collection and then to establish a digital library. So you can say digitization is the first need for establishing a digital library. Now, a question becomes, what is actually digitization means to? Students, digitization refers to the process of transforming a piece of information such as book, journal article, sound recording, pictures, audio tape or video recording in binary digit, which can be achieved through a variety of existing technologies. There is a very similar word, sounds like same, but actually have completely different than the digitization. And the term is digitalization. Digitalization uses digital information to simplify how we work and make it more efficient, such as by using digital technologies to transform reporting process and the collection and analysis of data. Digitalization does not change how we do business or create new type of business. Rather, it deals with making our work faster and better. It is not transformation that moved beyond digitization, while digitalization is a conversion of data and processes. Digitalization is transformation. So, if we are talking about digitization, one must be very careful that we are not talking about digitalization. There is another similar terms also existed, and that is called digital transformation. Transforming the world to a digital world is called digital transformation. But dear friends, the intention of this chapter is not to talk about transformation or anything, rather to talk on digitization as core. Now a very common question comes: why we should digitize our country? The answer is, today's library users are less likely to follow a linear journey to a physical journey. They browse online, check collections, and access or issue their needs through online. They rely on online. They use mobiles. Because of that, they feel everything can be possible through mobile. In order to make the contents they need, in order to satisfy the user need, library must digitize its content, because the changing client's behavior particularly thrust us towards digitization. Second, digitization enhance accessibility. As you can getting it that if a content is available in digital form, certainly a same book can be accessed by number of users in a same time. In case of physical book, if a book is being issued by a user, borrowed by a user, then the chances of getting it used by another user is never. In case of digitization, digitized content, if we put it into a server, from multiple clients or nodes, the same book seamlessly accessible by different users at the same time. It helps for excessive storage. Everybody knows Encyclopedia Britannica, Encyclopedia Americana, Oxford English Dictionary takes huge area of your stack. But if we convert it into a digital form, there is no space at all needed. We can save it into external drive or keep it into our server and give it a link or a process, establish a process to make it useful by multiple locations. Therefore, digitization helps better management. Certainly, if we can satisfy user need with minimum resource, with their maximum utilization, naturally it will be said to be as better management is there in library services. Dear friends, as you all know, library is a collection of documents of past, present and certainly said to be as anticipated future. This past have no limits in terms of years. In a library, in a big or a very library having good collections, also have collections like rare books, manuscripts, handwritten documents. In fact, if you have something in a palm leaf, you cannot make it useful by issuing it to a user because it's a rare document. So, digitization helps to preserve a document for a long time. A library, if digitize a palm leaf, then this palm leaf can be accessible in digital form by number of users from different locations at the same time. And palm leaf which is inside in the library remain intact without further distortions. There are thousands of books which need to digitize because they are using too much. There are number of books which we know becoming very much rare in today's world. Such type of books which are seminal in contents need to be digitized for long-term preservation. Since a digitized content can be copied more than one, there is a huge flexibility exists if we do or if we start digitizing our collection. As a result of that, digitization helps us for cost saving. The cost means everyday issue return, if it is being handled in library, certainly a cost is also involved over there. It is not a one-time cost a library usually spent for purchasing a document. To make it process, to maintain it, to make it usable, to use it and make it return back to its original position is a cost service because there human involvement is needed. Digitization also saves the costs. Now, we have to understand our library is not a organization which established just now. There is the existence of a library is for a long time. Therefore, we are saying it as a archival centers. Any library contains born digital document as well as retrospective content. Digitization basically deals with a content which are retrospective in nature. Here, born digital document need not to digitize again. Because if a document is already created in born digital form, everything that is needed for it access is already contained with the born digital document. Whereas for retrospective items, there is a immediate need of digitization. Whenever we convert our palm leaf or any rare document into a digital form, simply converting it by scanning doesn't serve the purpose until unless we add the value by adding the metadata about the digital content. Dear friends, digitization includes adding metadata, means adding information about the document so that later on this digitized content can be searched, can be retrieved, make it most useful by n number of users. So, basically when we talk about the word digitization, we are talking for the types of document that are retrospective in nature. Born digital document doesn't need any digitization. A very common question comes, should we digitize everything that is available in our library? One can say that digitization has so many positive effects. Therefore, a library must digitize everything. The answer must be no. Before digitizing any content, one must look few things. Otherwise, digitization not becomes a cost-effective services. The first one, there is no need to digitize every content, every retrospective content in the library. Because for our experience we know, number of documents in library are not being used, but there are few documents which are used very frequently. As a result of that, these documents become toxic. Sometimes it becomes fragile. To overcoming this situation, to remain intact, the content of the very precise, useful book or document of a library, we must digitize that type of material. Second, the document or the item which have a demand by the user should be digitized. Everything need not to digitize. Because if a document in demand, there is a chance of loss, there is a chance of fragile. To overcome this situation, a library must digitize their contents which are in demand. The second very important thing is that the copyright consideration or legal consideration should be looked before taking any object or any document, converting it to a digital form. Because we cannot permit it to digitize everything if there is not any permission. There are some documents which still lies copyright to the owner of the document. Only purchase a document in a library, not allow us to become the owner of that particular document. Because we are only the owner of that document but not the thought content of the document. Therefore, we are not permitted to digitize the thought content of the document without taking permission from the content owner. Therefore, an analysis or a judicious selection process is needed to check whether we are allowed to. If a document is beyond the copyright window period, mostly it is 20 to 30 years, we may digitize it. If a document is available under fair use clause, we can digitize it. If a document is government collection or a collection which was freely distributed or available. That can also be digitized. So, whenever we start the process of digitizing, we must check the legal status of the document. Unless until confirmed that legal status are okay, we cannot digitize that content. There is also need to put certain assessment when we digitize media content like audio, video or photographs. When I try to digitize a audio, we have to check the sound quality existed into this audio tape, whether there is a possibility to correct if there is any mistake existence. If the content, audio content is very precious, need to digitize, but if the audio is not in that format, that it is not compatible to take it in digital form, to convert it into digital form, we cannot digitize. In context of video clippings, color tone resolution need to be checked. Earlier days videos are very fade in color. Therefore, if you see some of the contents which are available in digital form, some of the early days cinemas or videos, you will see some black spots are usually comes into the videos. However, if a videos doesn't up to that mark, we should not digitize it. Photographs. The resolution of the photograph is very important because today's scanners can only handle up to a certain extent of less resolution based photographs. If we doesn't have that extent of scanners, that type of scanners through which low resolution photograph can also be scanned, we cannot think of for digitizing our contents. Dear friends, so far we have understand or we have discussed what type of documents we are allowed to digitize and we should digitize. A very important term that is associated with this chapter or this part is what is digitization. Although we have already discussed the digitization what is, but then question comes how digitization takes place. In these slides, we are trying to explain you from input to output, what are the steps to be followed for digitizing a content. So far, although we have understood the concept of digitization and the issues involved in the process of digitization, now let's understand the 4 very important steps of digitizing a content is scanning, optical character recognition, retaining page layout using Acrobat capture and rekey. The first very thing is scanning. For digitizing a content to be stored in a file as a bitmap image, we need to scan. Irrespective of the fact that there are different types of scanner existed for different types of document, we must first scan the document or a photograph or a line draw or a text Here text mean scholarly contents, rare books, artistic contents comes into the line drawing and all, and photographs the earliest pictures. There is a hardware we used here to scan this document. Altogether, various types of scanner are presently available in the market, but the very common scanner which is used for scanning a library document are flatbed scanner. Flatbed scanner is a type of scanner in where the document is scanned on a flat surface. Flatbed scanner are versatile and scan document of various sizes. The another type of scanner is book scanner. Book scanner is designed to scan books with a special placeholder for the books and high resolution to ensure the text is readable. As you know, there are number of books where books are not opened fully. Because of bindings and all, a book sometimes not open flatly. In that cases, this type of book scanner is a full solution. There is another type of scanner which is very much used for a continuous long text is overhead scanner. It is an intelligent scanner that can scan books and document with built-in algorithm. After completion of scanning, the files are saved to a file. This file types, as you know, may be JPG, may be PNG, may be TIFF. I will discuss later on this issue. But try to understand, after completion of scanning, we have to save a document to a file. But before scanning a document, before saving a document, the another very important thing need to do is use of OCR. Optical character recognition or OCR is a program, or you can say inbuilt program is in today's high quality scanners, which are used to transform scanned image into word processing format. A bit code or a bit mapped page image or set of image and generate a file that the text in ASCII code or a specific word processing format, leaving the image intact in the process. The question becomes why this OCRs comes into the picture. Because as I have already told you, scanning is not equivalent to digitizing until unless we add the value of the content. In order to add the value of the content, there is a need to repair the content. There is a need to understand the context of the document, accordingly adding metadata into the document. All these things are very, very important. So, here optical character recognition serves an important role to convert a image text into a graphics, into a ASCII coded or word processing format, leaving the image intact into the process. Sometimes OCR program treat unrecognized text as a wild or some other special character in the ASCII output. Just to overcome the problem of this, Acrobat Capture can be used to scan pages as image plus text, or as a normal PDF. Whenever we complete the process of scanning, it is essential to compare the first preparing keying of text followed by a full rekeying by a different operators for overcoming errors or inconsistencies that may occur while scanning. Therefore, dear friends, whenever you make a scan or do a scanning, try to understand the three very important things need to be considered to maintain its quality. Maintaining quality, the resolution should be at least 300 into 300 dpi. Here dpi means dot per inch. The dpi determines the range of colors or grayscale in the scan, influencing the richness of images. The time required for scan per page enable a person to scan effectively multiple documents. Hence, judicious selection is needed for equipment selection, resolution and quality, file format, metadata capture, storage medium, so that the same must be retrieved when needed. To make it retrieve compliant or search compliant, one must include the metadata of the images. Under data management steps, the bibliographic information means about the image, about the content of the image, about the thought content of the image in terms of keyword must be entered under descriptive metadata. Date of creation, version must be entered as administrative metadata, and level of description should be mentioned in structural metadata. So dear friends, unless we add the administrative metadata, descriptive metadata, structured metadata into a scan image, we can't say we are digitizing the content. Since the intention is to make available of the content to the end user, a user interface is also need to prepare, through which by putting the keywords or important words of the image content, one can get access of the image. These are the very three important steps: metadata inclusion, search functionalities, and preparing user interface is very much needed when we are thinking of digitization. So, overall the process of digitization can be explained as scanning, that means to scan the image into bitmap text, word processing text or ASCII format text, indexing, creating a searchable database of digitized material, storage compatible, storing the digital file in a secured format for long-term preservation, and then retrieval compliant, means ensuring that the user can easily access the digital material effectively. While doing digitization job and while we doing this activity of saving our files into digital format, since a library handles books, images, the size of the file become very big. Therefore, there is a need to adopt certain compression techniques to make the digital file for proper preservation. Dear participants, image compression is needed to reduce irrelevant or redundancy of the image data to be able to store or transmit data in effective form. Generally, compression techniques are classified into two categories, loosey and looseless. With the looseless techniques, the quality of original file remains same. The quality reduces in loosey techniques. For compressing text file, audio images, looseless techniques are very much better. But for wave images, audios, videos, loosey techniques are recommended. Different file formats support different techniques and are used for different purposes. These all are mentions in these slides. Other differences among looseless and loosey is also explained in the slides. Requesting to all of you go through this content to learn much more about this looseless and loosey techniques. As we have talked about file, in where digital files are to be saved, there is a need to think the format on which we must save our digital contents. As we are talking file format, let's have a look the pros and cons of various file formats existence. The JPG format create small size file, but TIFF save high quality image. So if there is a need to store image in high quality, choose TIFF over JPG. PDF is good for document as it is formatting, but file size becomes high if the contents are quite big. In that case, we also put certain compression techniques to make it in small size. Overall, structured format are easier to data management, but these are software dependent, while unstructured formats means native formats are flexible but harder to manage. So one have to put which file format, which structured or unstructured format to be followed for saving the content or digitized content is very important. Any digitization project need planning. Question about the purpose of digitizing material such as short-term use or long-term use should be discussed before starting digitization, because feasible objective ultimately impact on the scope of a project. Friends, planning and implementation proper digitization project is very much needed for library, because library deals with very precious documents. If scanning active records, then determine whether to scan related records as a single file, identify what record will be scanned, determine the volume of record to be scanned, determine whether the project will be one time or is a part of recurring, determine whether the original documents will be retained or disposed after scanning, confer with IT to determine its technical feasibility, file format, etc., as it is essential to decide first before start digitizing. Allocation of sufficient fund is important, but cost benefit analysis is also essential. The timeline of completion of job is very essential before starting the digitization project. This is all about digitization of library contents and all. Now, dear friends, let's discuss few MCQs that comes under this domain. What is the organization do jointly publish survey on digitization and preservation? There are two organizations, IFLA and UNESCO, who are responsible for publishing this document. Million books on the web, a book digitization project was initiated by whom? It is Carnegie Mellon University. You please read about detail on this. It's a very important, through which libraries are getting big scanners for digitization job under this project. Which one is not process of digitization? Among that, editing is not a process, otherwise indexing, storage, scanning are a part of digitization. What is optical character recognition? It is nothing but a tool to convert image into text. Why digitization is required? For enhanced accessibility and storage of the library content or a content of any organization. Certainly digitization is needed. Now let's see few broad answer questions in shortest form. What do you mean by digitization? Explain various steps: scanning, indexing, storing and retrieving. I have already discussed. Why scanning of retrospective document is needed? For long-term preservation, for make it useful, for putting it useful by multiple user. All these activities I have discussed. What do you mean by OCR? Optical character recognition. Explain why OCR is important: to convert the text into ASCII text format or word processing format, so that one can edit the bugs in a scan file. Explain the file format. Discuss the pros and cons of various digital file format. We have to talk about JPG, TIFF and other format we have talked on. What points are important to consider before starting digitization? Explain why these are important to consider. In the initial time, I have already discussed about what points are important for digitization of contents, or what points are to be take care of while digitizing the content. Thank you, dears. Thank you, students. Have a nice day. Thank you.